Welcome to Blue Talks.
Hello, Northwestern. I have a secret I would like to share with you today. Except, I didn't actually know this was a secret. For most of my life, I just assumed that everybody knew. And at some point, I was frustrated because I'm looking around and going, well, there's this really obvious thing over here, and yet the way that we move about our life and seek out success for our big picture missions is not quite happening. Why? And then I realized I see patterns. I see them everywhere. It's been my life. And the patterns that I saw that other people seem to have missed in reaching the success applied to all kinds of spheres all over the world. So we're talking global organizations. We're talking college students. We're talking small business owners, entrepreneurs. We're talking nonprofits or government sector. It didn't matter the scale and it didn't matter the industry. The rules seem to still apply. And I think what really happens is the rules apply because we're human. Because at the end of the day, regardless of the scale, regardless of the industry, there's a human being on the other side. And so, being a very passionate, very driven individual, and trying to attract the same into my life, I've met people who start out and they have this beautiful mission and vision, and they're passionate about their work. And you probably know someone like that. You maybe were someone like that. But then something happens. Something shifts, something changes, where the person is going at it and showing up and pushing and working hard. And some point, they become compliant. They give in. They give in to the system. It becomes about a never-ending checklist. Putting out the fires, showing up just so you can go home and start the day over again the next. So what happens in that space? Well, the first thing is we have a culture that believes that that is just what happens. How many times have we heard or have we said when we show up and we see that person who we call green or naive? How my mom used to put it is, she's like, well, she still puts it, to be honest, is at what point are you going to take off the rose glasses and come back to earth, come back to this plane of existence, right? And at some point, this person is going to realize that their dreams are too far out there, they're too unreachable, they're too big, they're too hard. And at which point are they going to come join the rest of us over here in our everyday grind, right? So I mentioned the patterns. Well, I love patterns. And I love the fact that you can actually look across the board and look at individuals, look at organizations, look at movers and shakers and changemakers that are actually making a difference and making the impact without letting that culture stop them. That tells me that it is possible. And that tells me that there's a process to get there because as changemakers have these similarities across the board. So here's what I wanted to share with you today. There are 3 key elements that I've identified that these individuals, these organizations, regardless of where they are, how big they are, or what they're working on, all share. And I've identified these things as the key elements in order to get your mission actually through to completion, to actually get that goal completed. Can you imagine just for a second? Wow, right? So here's what I found. Number 1, silos. For whatever reason, as human beings, we've identified that we need to do all the things on our own as individuals, on our own as teams, on our own as companies, to the point that you go, and the funny thing is everybody thinks it's just them. Everybody you talk to, they're like, oh, in this industry. And I'm like, please. Like, no, this is truly across the board where we feel like, for whatever reason, we have to be responsible for it all. And when we meet somebody who does something similar, we feel like they're competition. Something I teach my students is there's the healthy kind of competition where, you measure your own success and you grow and you can use other individuals as a marker for yourself. Great. But the other kind of competition where you're looking at somebody else and you're saying, well, it's either them or me, either they're going to be successful or I am, doesn't work when your mission is the same. And guess what? If your mission is big enough, if what you're doing is important enough, is impactful enough, I hope and I pray and I know that you're going to find people on that path who are trying to fight for the same thing. And those people might just have the same values, and they might just have pieces that you need that you absolutely hate doing. And I bet you're holding pieces that they're dreading to do every single day, which brings me to point number 2, which is processes. Willpower. Willpower is not an endless resource. Time is not an endless resource. Health is not an endless resource. You are not an endless resource. Stop trying to do everything on your own. We need to have processes. When's the last time you took a vacation or a day off? Let's be honest. What did you do on that day off or vacation, right? And so if we're able to break through this idea of silos and get into a space of collaboration, we can understand that we don't have to be all things to everyone in order to get our mission done. We can actually align ourselves with people, with strategies, with tools, with systems that can support us in doing what we love as a contribution to the mission. We don't have to do it all. We're not supposed to. That's how we burn out. That's how we lose traction. That is how we fall apart and lose where we're actually going. What is the destination? Which brings me to point number 3. My favorite story of all time. A person is walking through the woods and sees a guy chopping down a tree and keeps walking. A few weeks later, turns around, walking back, same guy, same axe. The tree hasn't really moved. The guy is working really, really hard. And he looks and he's like, oh, well, he's got a very dull axe. Like, he's been there for 2 weeks, just tirelessly going at it, right? So he goes up to the guy and he's like, let me help you sharpen your axe. Like, you got to stop so we can sharpen that thing so you can. And the guy's like, no, don't talk to me. I can't stop. I have a tree to chop down. Right? And how many of us, think, as funny as that story is, think about how much we do that in our lives. How many fires are we focused on? We mentioned the endless list. That list isn't going anywhere. We can say, oh, well, maybe someday I'll get through it, Maybe some things on the list aren't as important as others. But where is your priority? When is the last time you actually sat down and reevaluated your mission, reevaluated the destination to which you are trying to get? How can you make that a habit? Because some of you can say, oh, well, I did it. We just reworked our mission and vision. Awesome. Let's go. We're running with it. How quickly do you think you lose track of that mission and vision when you are running 100 miles an hour doing all the things? Right? And so what can you do to implement a strategy, a habit building strategy to continue to align yourself? Are you in alignment with where you're going? Are you in alignment with your values? Do you have a clear picture of where you're going? Because then you can reverse engineer almost anything. I'm one of those crazy people who thinks anything is possible. Because once you stop asking yourself, can I not? And you start asking how, then you just figure out the steps. So what dream have you been holding on to? What dream have you been working on? What is your big picture? What is your big mission and vision? And how can you break yourself out of those silos? Who else can you partner with on your journey? How can you take the differences and make them complementary? And what kind of processes can you set in place to make sure that you're constantly aware of where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing? So we don't have to play this card of like, oh, well, is it time to go home yet? Is it, oh, no, got to wake up now, got to go to work. How do we switch it back from a job and reclaim our mission of the big change that we've set our mind to when we first got started? Thank you.